Season 3, episode 24 is starting like my mood these days, kind of funky
Mm-hmm.
because like well, you and I had a weird on-ramp. We started talking, then your computer froze up and you had to restart. By the time you got back, you finished what you had to say and we've just jumped right into the episode. So we haven't really had an on-ramp. So maybe we can kind of have one now.
Okay.
A public version of the on-ramp. So the past couple of days, I feel like I've gotten into a bit of a funk, kind of stuck, doing lots of reflecting on things and wondering and not thinking so much about the future, but like this new normal is new and it's kind of abnormal. So with that in mind, I appreciated you talking about the time you take to get outside in nature and to really see it and hear it and feel it in a different way than you normally would, or at least that's how I interpreted what you said about being in the forest. My interpretation is that you are now, with this physical social distancing, you are feeling, seeing, hearing your environment in a different way, and it sounds like you're appreciative of it. Am I right?
Yep.
And I love that. And I don't have a forest close to me. We've been going out for walks and stuff, but you make me think that we should, like my family, should get in the car and go find a wooded area. That there's a couple that I can think of right now where we've been before, and just hit the trail and feel it and see it and smell it and hear it in a different way than how I would normally. Normally it's a great place to retreat, but I feel like every place is a place to retreat now because there's nobody's around. And we're behaving in a different way. Like yesterday, we went out for a walk, and when we see somebody on the sidewalk, we either cross the street, get to like go to the other sidewalk so we're away from people, or we get onto the road until we pass them, then we get back on the sidewalk. And we were coming up a path in a park that's close to our house, and there are these two guys, and one of them was smoking, the other one had a camera, and they were clearly doing something. Like they seemed to have purpose. They weren't just out for a walk. They were taking pictures of stuff. They were stopping here and there, and they were like right in the middle of the path. And my wife said, "What are these guys doing?" And I said, "I don't know, but we're gonna go over here." And we veered off into the grass, and it was interesting. Like it was just different. It was different. The whole thing was different. My wife saying, "What are these guys doing here?" She would have never asked that before. We would just would have walked past them. Um, those two guys, it seemed like they were not following a new etiquette, right? It was like, hey, if you're gonna stop in the middle of a path, a paved path, because you can take a picture or something, and you see a family coming, the new etiquette is get out of the way or make it clear that you are distancing yourself from these people. They didn't do any of that. And I felt a little irritated. Like, come on, man. This is the new way. We're not supposed to be closer than 2 meters to each other. This is the new way. And it was interesting. The whole thing was interesting. So even though I was out retreating from the world, it didn't feel like a retreat. It felt like the new way of going for a walk, which is you see someone and you hightail it over here, over there until you can get past them and you get back onto your path. And so it makes me think I got to get to a forest. But now I'm concerned that there's going to be a whack of people in the forest, and that's going to take away. But anyway, I'm sure I'll find something that that'll work for me. But it just feels it's so different, and I don't know why it's so different. I don't know why. Like it's an introvert's dream, you know. But it's just I think it's layered for me. It's layered with I'm at home trying to do work, but I can hear the kids right next to me, right? And it's trying to get the kids engaged in work, and they're pushing back. And it's trying to balance all that and maintain your sanity and find time to have your moments, right? Like at school, when I have my planning time, I can go places in the building where I can be alone. I don't have to hear anybody or see anybody, and I can do my work. And I can't really do that here. It's different here. So I think the past couple of days, it's starting to get on my nerves. But this is good because now I'm talking to you about it. I'm going to be able to shift gears and move forward and stay refreshed and do things that will refresh me. So that's kind of where I'm at with this whole thing.
My feels are like I'm feeling a real. I think I'm feeling a real. Here's the two tensions: feeling a real loss of connection with surroundings. So on one hand, the shift now to not connect, to not be in the same space, like the actual social distancing factor, that 6 feet, the metric of that is really it's kind of overwhelming in a lot of ways for me. Like when out and walking and sort of seeing, the crew that was taking up space in front of you, like just seeing how groups like that and how people are moving through the world now, and intentionally not getting anywhere near each other and doing it with a smile and politeness. There's something eerie about that. There's something really eerie about humans accepting this as the new normal. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just, if I really pause and I think about the sort of like the movement of people around me when I'm on the trail, and the now distance that you have to go and trail when I'm, let's say, out for a walk in the woods or even on the sidewalk or whatever. The willingness to sort of step out on the road or walk along a boulevard or just wait for someone to pass, and again, sort of sharing a smile in that moment, like that's the new salutation, is just, there's something really eerie about it. To sort of acknowledge and celebrate the space between us. And I don't have much more to go on. I think, what I was mentioning about going into the forest and being surrounded by trees, one of the things that I take comfort in sort of being out on a walk and sort of walking perpendicular to the path and just going into the trees, is there's something, and the density of the trees, and I mentioned this in our short on-ramp, is that being able to be shoulder to shoulder in what feels like kind of a busy forest is kind of mimicking a little bit of what I crave in the social connection. And I'm probably tapping into what it's like to be in school around all that movement and the impediments that are put in front of you in a regular school day of having to travel from class to class. You have to go lesson to lesson. Like, there's very concrete checkpoints that give you traction and make you feel like you're moving forward and you're sort of, kind of living your day. I think walking perpendicular to the path out into the forest and kind of standing between trees and sometimes shoulder to shoulder, just being able to put a hand on each, reminds me that, well, on one hand, it kind of grounds me. It sort of gives me a little bit of peace in that this space too existed before social distancing, exists now, and will exist afterwards. As in, there's sort of like this continuum of connectedness that you can tap into regardless of what's happening with your social distancing. You can go out and feel crowded if that's something that gives you peace, and it does me. And I walk away feeling as if I've just kind of sated or satisfied my need to connect with others by being in that space. And funny thing is, like, going I'm not going full Northern Ontario, bushwhacking here. Like, I'm not, though I would probably dig that too. But it is sort of like just far enough so that the pathway isn't the point anymore. Just kind of being and listening and sort of observing and actively kind of like thinking my thoughts away from those spaces that are reminding me that I'm distant from people. I take a lot of comfort in that.
Can I tell you about a cool experience I had this week?
Of course.
So my school is right beside a church. I work at St. John's Catholic Elementary School, and
Go Thunder.
Go Thunder. Thanks, buddy.
You're welcome.
St. John's Catholic Church is right next door, and I love having a church right next door to the school that I work at, and it's happened twice before, but I was never really connected to the church the way I am now. And there's something about this church. The inside is just real old school, lots of wood, beautiful stained glass windows. There's just something about it. And so I had this idea that I'd love to fly my drone in the church and I'll get all kinds of video footage from different perspective. And with this whole social distancing quarantine thing going on, I sent an email to the priest at the church, who I think is a really good dude, Father Cruz, really nice man, great with the kids, great with the staff. I sent him an email and said, "Hey, Father, I want you to watch this video," and it was a video of the drone footage I got of our school, and I sent it to him. I said, "I've been experimenting with this new tech, this new device. I would love to fly it in the church." and when I say it like that, even I think, "Whoa, that's so offside," because
that was my giggle. It's just like it feels radical. It feels rebellious.
It feels wrong.
Yeah,
right?
That too.
It's got to be, I don't know about you, but it's got to be my Catholic guilt. It just feels like, how disrespectful can you be to fly a drone around in such a sacred space, right? But so I said I'd like to get some video of different perspectives of the church, and I think I've got some ideas. What do you think? And he was like, "Right on. When are you free?" kind of thing. So he said, "Just let me know. Like, you can get into the church between this time and this time on these days." And because mass isn't happening, church is shut down, everything's shut down. So it starts this. I asked him early on in this whole experience, and things are changing like daily with this whole pandemic. So I asked him early on, and then as it was coming closer to getting into the church, my wife was like, "Hey, are people going to be around? Like, you need to be alone. You can't be standing right beside Father Cruz. Like, it's not going to work. You're not supposed to." I said, "Whoa, relax. I'm going to make sure it's clear with Father that, I mean, I know it's his church, but we should not be close at all." And so when I kind of said that into one of my emails, he's like, "Of course, I'll open the door and walk away, and you just message me when you're done. And it's all yours. You do what you need to do. I'll turn all the lights on. Everything will be ready for you." So I'm like, "That's awesome." I get there. I go in and I was like craving what you talk about with the forest experience. I was craving being alone in that church. I walked in and I got some video of me setting up the drone and stuff, and I'm going to put it together into something and put on our Decoded YouTube site. But I walked in. When you walk into the church, there's about 4 meters, maybe 6 meters between the front door and the next door that opens up into the church proper. And so I was in the foyer of the church, and the first thing I I put my gear down and I just grabbed both of the doors and I just opened them just so that I could see the church again, you know? And then I went over to the side. He's got this, I guess it's the crying room. It's for people with children and whatever. And there's a big piece of glass so you can still see the mass, but they can't hear you. So I go in there and I start setting up. And I was in the church for a good 50 minutes flying the drone. Like I had to change the battery once. I've never had to do that before because I always just play with it. And then when the battery gets low, I'm done. But here I was like, no, I still want to do some more stuff. And there was a lot of flying, stopping, thinking, setting up. Like it was interesting. That experience was so cool on a number of different levels. Level number one, I got to fly my drone in the church by myself. So there's something fun about that for like the kid inside of me who this would never imagine saying to a certain priest, hey, I want to do this. They'd be like, no. So the fact that I was given permission was like a big stamp of approval for me. And then the second part of it was just to be alone in that space. You know how many times I've been in that space with my students for a mass, or sometimes I go for mass on my own before school starts and I want to pull out my camera and take pictures, but it's not respectful. And here I am in the church, allowed to take pictures, allowed to shoot video. And it was just me by myself. And I sent you a couple of shots that I took that I just, like at those moments, I felt something really neat, you know? And I think if it weren't for this pandemic, I think I probably would have made my way into the church, but I wouldn't have had an hour of uninterrupted time, you know? And maybe Father would have been hanging out with me, which is fine. I don't have an issue with that. But in this situation, I was permitted to just be by myself. Nobody was going to be coming in the door. Nobody was really outside. You know, the streets were quiet. My car was the only one in the parking lot. You know, it was a moment that I'll never forget and that I will cherish because of the really cool feelings I had in that building by myself. So there was the two parts, right? I was there to work. Like I was there. I wanted to get certain kinds of shots and I've got this creative idea. I want to put this thing together. And then the other side was to just slow down and to literally, that was my forest for an hour. You know, I was there with the statues and with the stained glass and with the smell. It was just me and my environment, and it was awesome. So I look forward to putting something together. Now I know I told you that I didn't feel so great, so there was a lot of excitement leading up to it, and then when I got in the church and I lit up the drone, sent it up, I wasn't happy with the video that I was getting. I guess I was expecting more from my drone than what I was getting at that moment in time. But I pushed through and I just got what I needed to get. And then outside, I turned my camera on and I talked a little bit about how I just finished in the church and I wasn't feeling so great. I wasn't feeling so great about the drone component, the work component of it. But yet on the flip side, I was feeling very refreshed to have been in there by myself, and to just think and feel in there on my own. But then, not last night, the night before, I sat down before bed and I took all the equipment out and I just started looking at the video shots that I got, and then I could refresh myself, and I did feel good about what I got. I did feel good about the lighting. I mean, it's not what I would want it to be, but it's what I got, and it's what I guess the capability of my drone could do. So long story short, I'm looking forward to the grind of putting something together there. And I emailed Father and told him thank you very much. I can't wait to put something together for you. And he said, can I have a request? I'm like, yeah, what's up? And he said, can I have access to the footage you got just so I can maybe use some of it to freshen up the website? I said, it's all yours. Like, it's all yours. I'll put it on a stick and I'll give it to you. You can do whatever you want with it. And I said, I'll give you raw footage of it, like me doing stuff, me being in the shot, all the stuff that's people aren't going to see when I publish. You can have it all. You can do whatever you want with it. Because what else do I give someone who gave me that opportunity, right? Like that opportunity, I don't think I can express to someone unless they felt it, what that opportunity meant to me. So really cool experience, really cool retreat. I'm going to use that to fuel myself forward. And I don't think it would have happened in the same way, or maybe I would not have appreciated it as much if it weren't for what's happening in our world today.
I like it. It's so humble, eh? The priest. Can I have footage? Totally, like
not even.
We're equal here. Like, will you share with me? I love that. It kind of like also kind of decomposes some people's belief that the pastor has to be here. So I just love that. You know what I mean? It kind of says, no, we're equal. Can you share what you created with me? I love that.
And he didn't even like come out and ask. Like he did, but it was I don't even know how to explain it. Maybe while we talk, I'll find the email and I can kind of paraphrase, but it was not like he's like, because I told him, hey, I want to put something together, and obviously you can have it, but this is part of my creative thing with my drone. And he's like, aside from the video you're going to make, can I have the bits and pieces? Almost like the ends meet. Can I have the ends meet?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, of course you can have the ends meet. You can have it all. Like if it weren't for you allowing me to do this and all you want in return, and he was asking. So imagine what would he say if I said, no, you can't have it.
Well, that would sort of signal, I think, a space in the relationship. Do you know what I mean? Like that would sort of some short-handed kind of thinking on your part that it shouldn't be. And I don't think you're not that guy, but I think that's probably there would have been a I would like to believe in acceptance. Okay, I understand. I would like to think there'd be some mentoring there, like this is a community space. So things that happen here, we want to try and keep it as open as possible. Like try to a little bit of like that. You're a part of our community too, Rolland. So other people would really enjoy to see how you see. That's my hope, as opposed to him grabbing your drone and running.
And he wouldn't. He's. I have to be honest.
I love it.
I think I have, it's been one cool thing I can say, and I hope now that I say it, I don't jinx myself for the rest of my career. But I have to tell you one really cool thing that I've gotten in my career as a Catholic educator is I've always had a good connection with the parish priest, the priest that's connected to our school, the priest who comes to our school to do liturgies, and the churches we go to as a school to pray and to worship. I've always had a cool vibe with the priest. It's always been it's always just good to talk to another guy. And when they come into the school, they'll come over, they'll say hello, because there aren't a lot of guys. So it's kind of neat to just, hey, there's another guy here. I'm going to say hi or whatever. I've always had a good connection with the priests. And it's something that as I talk to you now, I can make that connection, right? I become aware of that fact and appreciative too of their friendship and of their mentorship. Because, this, in this situation, this kind of takes things to another level, right? Like I didn't ask him as a teacher who works at the school. I asked him as a community member, hey, Father, we know each other. Can I come into your church and let my drone fly and get some video of the church from the drone's perspective? That was a total outside of professional work ask. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because if I can make a connection, last year, Carlos Roque, Whitney McKinley, and Michael Leonard, three amazing educators in my school board, who I consider part of my professional learning network, they did this really cool project in Hamilton at the cathedral where the bishop works. They did a thing with their classes where they had a 360-degree camera, and they basically created a Google field trip at the cathedral. And when all this was happening, when the church presented their work to the community, I said to Father Cruz, hey, Father, did you see that stuff? And he's like, yeah, I got the email the other day. I'm fully aware of what those three individuals did. I said, would you be open to us doing something like that in your church? And he said, of course I would. That'd be amazing. And he kind of looked at me like, you'd be willing to do that? And I said, yeah, of course I'd be willing to do that. I think it'd be great for our school community to have that artifact, to have that ability to see where you work and what you do, because we're not in there all the time, right? So it'd be awesome for the kids to have that opportunity, and for newcomers. So people, come into our building, they're new. We're actually, Michelle Soulard, my ESL teacher, she did a 360 field trip in our building. It's not published yet, and with all the things that are happening, us not being in school, I have a feeling her publication will be delayed, but she's done the same thing. So when we have somebody walk into our school, register, we can give them the ability to see our building and to see where they're going to be learning virtually. And so I was like, well, that'd be great to have the church in there too. And he was like, yeah, man, that's cool. Let's do it. So I had already asked him to try something new and different, and, put the church in a bit of a vulnerable way, because, you're going to have people in there with cameras and stuff doing all this stuff, and you don't really know what they're doing. But he already agreed to that. So I felt like he was very approachable, very open to doing something different, with the ultimate goal of showing the beauty of the environment that he works in, that we get to visit and pray in. It's a beautiful church. It's very old school, and it reminds me of when I was a kid, and it reminds me of the good times I had when I connect church to my life. So, I mean, he's very open that way. He at Mass, he'll have he's got projectors up in the on the ceiling, and they project the words to the Mass and stuff so people can follow along. So he's very into doing things in a modern way, which some priests aren't interested in that, and that's fine. But the ones that I've met recently have all been very open to, blogging and having a YouTube channel and doing things so that their ministry connects with the way people are living their lives today. And it's refreshing. It's refreshing because it's so cool to see something so old, something so traditional, welcome in some of the new stuff, and not to lose the tradition, not to lose the reverence, but to boost it, to give it like a 3.0 feel, right?
Oh,
hey,
I like that 3.0.
This is church, and it's still a place to worship, and we've got traditions, right? Like hardcore. We're not going to lose any of that. We're just going to augment it. We're going to boost it. We're going to 3.0 this experience so that it fits with how you live your life, but it's still a place to retreat. It's still a place to worship. It's still a place to observe the traditions of the faith and to keep them going. I really didn't want to talk about church this whole time, but it's just, I guess, the experience. It's the experience of something bigger than me. And I do get that in the forest. And whenever, like my family and I, we've gone for hikes and stuff. And whenever I go, I always do the same thing. They start to walk ahead of me or I walk ahead of them. And I literally stop and kind of put my arms out and I just soak it up. I just take in a deep breath and I look around and I just, every time I take a step, I listen for the crunches and the cracks and stuff. I love it. It's awesome.
I think I love the sort of like the divergence of bringing in your spiritual practice. I've said it before, learning to be mindful and present can come in so many different forms. And I still go back to, I don't know, season 1, season 2, when you were talking about preparing for, I think it was you're talking about Lent. Was it Lent?
Lent or Advent.
Yeah. I think maybe it was Advent. I think it was Advent, preparing for that celebration. Was transformational for me. It was like it was a moment. If I take that and I bring it up to now, it's me standing in the forest, looking at everything around me and realizing that this is what ties us together. The fact that this space was here before COVID-19. This is going to be here while we're in the middle of it. It's going to be here afterwards. And I get to be a part of this. Like, it gave me that kind of peace that there was something kind of going on that I just kind of connected to. That there was another way to consider my current reality that was already there that I just tuned into. So when you talked about preparing for Advent, I'm like, I get that. I may not follow that as a Catholic practice, but as a seeker to try and find the value and connection with that space, I loved it. So this whole conversation around bringing a drone into church, I think that there's always, you do anything with church and to church that doesn't fit the narrow definition of church, and there's going to be the opportunity for someone to kind of poke at it and say that's disrespectful. So I like the whole riff on this. I love how it opens up a way, because some of the spaces that you filmed, like the opportunity for what you can capture with the drone and share with the community. Yeah, it's a forced perspective, because I mean the drone can only capture so much, but forced perspective, in this case, is still extra perspective. No one gets up that high in the church. No one gets to sort of like be up above the pendant lamps and kind of looked at. Like, nobody gets that kind of connection to the bigger thing that's going on in that church. Like, you were up, that drone was up, you're putting someone up in the space where all the music rises to, where the warmth is, where the perspective, and you can see the whole congregation. Like, there's value to that. And I think it's awesome that someone's going to get an opportunity to take a peek at it.
Not only height, I want to jump in about not only height, but the closeness you can get. So like the big anything behind the altar. People don't normally get behind the altar. I was behind the altar. I was up close with where the Eucharist is kept. I was up close. There's a cross with Jesus on it, and I was literally like, I was inches away from that cross. And I'm hoping that perspective, I just hope it will bring people an appreciation, because people don't get in that space.
You're building a new fluency, though. Just that's the one thing. Like, to on-ramp people to this, there's the wow factor, and then there's the learning just after that. So it's going to be a two-stager at least. And then there's going to be the innovation of it. So somebody saying, wow, like, how can I look at, either it's theoretical, how do I look at spaces in a different way, or it's going to be actual, like, next Sunday, everybody's bringing a drone. It's bring your drone to church Sunday.
I don't think, see, that's not going to happen. But anyway, I found the email.
Cool.
This is what Father said to me. So I told him, thanks for the opportunity. Can't wait to put something together. He said, thank you. He said he's sure it's going to be beautiful. But in addition to the final product, he was wondering something. You got to love that. I'm wondering something.
Sounds like a teacher.
He says, in case it's possible for you, could you kindly share some of the footage in the near future? I think it'll be great to be able to add some effects to our web page and Facebook page. That's it. So like, I'm like, you know, I think my response was heavy-handed. Like, of course, I was like George Costanza's mom and dad. Of course you can have it, right? Like, no problem. You take it, do whatever you want with it. That's all he wants. And which is, I was going to, like, that's not a real big ask. I was going to give it to him anyway. I thought if anything, he wouldn't want it because he's like, what am I going to do with all this weird footage, right? But hey,
isn't that awesome that he has a vision?
Yeah, it is.
That's really cool.
He doesn't even know. Well, he might have an idea of what I'm doing, but he might not know what I'm doing, but still think, hey, maybe I can use some of this stuff and do something with it for my website. I think that's fantastic.
Modern learning. I love that.
Wow. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit, talk about school.
Do it.
I have called every single one of my students' families. Sadly, though, I've not connected with 6 families, and I've called them like 3 times, and I can't. You know what sucks is I call and I leave a message on the home phone, the cell phone. I tell them, hey, it's Mr. C calling. I've got some questions for you. How are you guys doing? Number 1. Number 2, is there access in the home to technology and to the internet? Because if it looks like we're going to be moving forward with some learning outside of school, and so I want to make sure you have what you need. And then it's like, but there's no way for them to get back to me. So I say to them, if you have access to email me back. I'm not going to leave them my home phone number. I'm not going to leave them my cell phone number. So, and I can't leave them the school number because there's nobody in the school to check the messages. So I'm feeling really, it sucks that there are 6 families, and I'm going to try some more. I have a hard deadline with my school because they need to know by a certain day so they can get technology ready to provide to those families. I don't know the plan yet. I'm not privy to the plan. That my pay scale doesn't take me up there. I don't know how we're going to get people internet access, but I'm told, or at least I have a vibe, a feeling that the system's going to try to do that for people. So I'm hoping that I can get in communication with these 6 families, because there's going to come a point, and maybe there isn't going to be a point. Maybe when I do finally connect with them, we can still make arrangements to get them what they need if they need anything. But right now they're not showing me that they have any kind of digital capability because the kids aren't logging into our D2L site. There's no emails from them. There's no shared Google documents that they normally do from school. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of drop that because that was I feel like I'm on a mission. And I feel like I do not want to fail this mission. Have you spent any time trying to contact anybody? Do you have the same issue in high school? I know you work with students that are students who are like under the special education umbrella, and I don't know too much about the function level of your students because of their needs, but I'd like to hear your perspective. Like I feel like I'm teaching primary students, so they don't always have the answers to my question. Sometimes I need their parents to answer my question, but at the same time, with some of my students being newcomers, the parents are not comfortable with the English language. So when I've called and I've talked to the parents, they've literally said hello and then handed their phone over to their child
Yeah.
and then listened in. Like, so I'll talk to the child and then the child will translate to the parent, which is really kind of cool. And they're 8. So tell me, I would love to hear about your experience with your students. Like, is it as simple as sending everybody an email and they all just get it and you move on?
So that was a starting point for me. I just kind of posted up we got a kind of a template from our school board just to sort of say kind of the blurb. It was more of a news report than anything, giving suggestions where people could go online and check out updates and such. And then I had parents that reached back to me. So right now my portfolio is kind of split. I'm resourcing, which is supporting the students that were in my grade 9 learning strategies class in first semester. So what I do is I go and I'm actually in their classrooms with them this semester, supporting their learning, different strategies, different sort of like you can do it, like just positive affirmation. Sometimes they're coming out of class and we would be working in the resource room. So that's kind of the model that's part of my schedule. The other part of my schedule is 2/3 of my schedule is working in a community classroom with students on the autism spectrum. And that's a culinary class. So my role as an instructor there is as the integration period so we have 2 sections, 2 different classes of autism community learning. Like that's just the classroom that we have. So when each of those teachers go on prep, so their preparation period, their section of students come to me and we cook. And it's looked at life skills and sort of prepping for independent learning. So the students are all at different levels of skill, just in the kitchen. Their capacity to develop the skills are all in different places. Their exceptionality plays into that as well. And then they're teenagers. they're teenagers at the heart of it. These are kids that are going through puberty, that are sort of like developing both emotionally and physically and psychologically. So you have all that going on as well. So what ends up happening is like in the normal week, our normal week for both sections would be Mondays is all about making salad. So that's our salad day, prepping up salad. And it's usually a 2-component or a 3-component salad. It involves other smaller structured skills like the washing and the tearing and the chopping, and then the numeracy part of it, which is the portioning and the counting. And then there's the literacy part of it, if a student is working off a recipe card or a structured learning PECS recipe. And then there's the social element, because often we're working at a common desk, so like a big table standing around it and kind of working shoulder to shoulder. So we're looking at social goals as well. Tuesdays are takeout Tuesdays, so the students would normally bring in stuff from home that their parents would ask for us to be prepped up in sort of like different ways. So we would be, sometimes it's making salad for the family. Some of the parents send in like a whole head of cauliflower, peeling potatoes. They send in whatever and we just prep it. And that becomes kind of like individualized student cooking skills. So that's kind of more sitting one-to-one directly with, or hand over hand with direct support of the kid. Wednesdays and Thursdays are usually baking labs. So we'll make muffins or cookies. And then I work in service and hospitality into that. So we work on communicating with individuals in the school. So we will go out into the school, and we have some students can hold on to a script. Other students need a little script, and we will approach people and ask, would you like a muffin? So we do the sort of the social dynamic thing, learning the social skills. Would you like a muffin? If they say no, what do you say? If they say yes, what do you say? And then the safety and sanitation of actually service, giving the napkin, giving a paper plate, using tongs. And then Friday's always been pizza day. So we all get together. Perfect Friday, eh? So what we'll do usually on one of our vegetable prep days is we'll chop up peppers. Often the pizza, got to be honest, the pizza with most times, 99% of the time, has red and green peppers, white onions, and pepperoni. So with that, we're using some of the, us standing around, and actually I'll buy a pre-made dough. We haven't got to the space where we're making the dough, but like a pre-made raw dough from a grocery store. So we're looking at both fine and gross motor skills of sort of working the dough and stretching it onto the tray. The mathematical skills of organizing symmetrical garnishing around the whole thing, the safety and sanitation skills of cleanup afterwards. There's always safety and sanitation every single day, but this one in particular also involves using appliances, which is the stove. So safety sanitation, putting on the oven mitts, standing away from the door, physically pulling out the rack on the oven. And then we get pizza. And sometimes while we're watching pizza, we'll watch an episode. While we're eating pizza, we'll watch an episode of Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, just to kind of in the background. It's a wonderful week. Does that sound like that sounds like a good week, eh?
Dude.
I've never actually told you what I do. I'm realizing that 3 seasons in, I've never actually laid out the week.
Dude, I'm dying here.
So that's our week. And I started, so beginning mid-February, I created a Google site. And what I started to do, I think I shared it with you back in the day, just what do you think about the accessibility? How does it look? And you kind of said something's not working. So I kind of adjusted. So I have a site that's ready to go, which is bittersweet that I have this ready to go, because what it does is it lays out the functional tasks of the classroom. So functional task analysis in my particular case has to do with if we do a roasted potato. Let's say roasted potato is which we do as well. We do roasted potatoes, and that has to do with the vegetable prep days. But let's say we do a roasted potato. What are all the micro tasks involved with preparing that potato? So from the point of, you can pick whatever starting point it can be. You can do a functional task assessment all the way from going to buy the potatoes, as in, what does that field trip look like? And then all the way to consuming the potatoes. And each one of the moments in there, you can break down into a separate checklist of achievables. So that's the real dressed down basics of functional task analysis. And then you sort of within that look at independence and prompt level. So mastery would be dependent on a high independence and a low prompt level. So that's what I'm constantly assessing during the week. So there's my ASD program in a nutshell. So I've had a couple parents after I've put out the, hey, how you doing? How's everyone, well, here's some information as to where you can go looking for more updates. I've had a couple parents reach back and say, okay, where was my son? I have all boys right now. Where was my son in relation to this skill set? So my take on that is that they're looking to they're doing one of two things. They're either looking to sort of like pick up on that from home, or they've gotten some support somewhere, maybe in a program, and the program is asking, okay, the kids in school kind of doing culinary, where are they in their culinary skills development? So I've sent out a couple emails to parents that kind of like address that functional skills assessment as to, okay, if you're going to be working with knives, here's how we work on it in class. If you are maybe use this vegetable instead of this vegetable because this vegetable sometimes got thrown on the ground, but this vegetable there was high engagement with. So, and throughout all of this, throughout every day of the week, there's also the assessment of introducing new things. So parents will kind of say, oh, this has happened. Yeah, I stopped introducing rice because it always would just get squished in the hand and not eaten. So I'm aware of some of the introducing new, as much as I try and remain systematic, predictable, and prime the kids for what we're going to do next, which is why we do, that's why we do this, that same schedule every day of the week. Excuse me. I'm also aware of it's good for them to be exposed to new things in a safe way. So I have had students that the parents have said, we at one point, this was last year, we were doing just English muffin pizzas. Pretty simple, English muffin, sauce, cheese, sometimes it was pepperoni. And I had a parent say, well, there's no point in doing that because my kid never eats bread. I'm like, okay, I'll take that in, thank you. By the end of the semester, the kid was pulling the crispy bits just off the edge and eating that. No allergies involved, no intolerances. This is kind of like the mindset. This is the patterns of behavior that sometimes preferences that anybody, neurotypical or neurodivergent individuals that are exceptional, everyone develops some sort of preference, right? Their preferences with food. Sometimes it becomes ingrained and that's all you do. Other times, some people are a little bit more open to change. They become bored. They want to do something. For these students, for me, it has become these kids, I want to introduce them to things in a slow fashion. So that's also something that happens within that frame, is introducing new elements for no other reason is that that's what the world does. If I'm looking at it as a life skill, the whole world won't be a structured learning lesson. Some of these individuals, my students are going to be might be going, when they're done high school, they could be going into group home settings. They could be living at home. They could be doing day programming. So some of them might be moving into independent living. So having just a little bit of a familiarity and kind of a constant bit of familiarity that new can be cool and kind of fun. I've got that kind of operating in the background. Dude, that's been my last 2 years. So what I'm trying to still figure out is, what does that program look like through e-learning? And I have had a parent say, yeah, my kid's not going to do e-learning. It ain't happening. It ain't happening, Clough. So that's stuff, eh? That's stuff.
Listening to you talk about it, I wondered, I'm not, if you just put aside like the special education component, where was this when I was in high school? I would have loved to, are there culinary classes? Well, there are, because when my son and I went to the high school for his, they had like a grade 8 night come into the high school and go on a tour and all that cool stuff, and we did, and it was funny. He ran into some of his friends and like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm going to see the science rooms. They're like, come with us to culinary. They're baking croissants or something, and literally like for the next 3 hours they're just going to keep baking food. So we headed over there and the kids waited for the food to come out of the oven. But it was really cool because as you have all these weird, awkward teenagers in this kitchen waiting for food to come out, guess who's talking to them? The teachers. Right? They're like, hey, do you want to take this course? This is what we do here. And they're showing them different stations. And it looked like a restaurant kitchen times 3. It was really big. And then the food would come out of the oven and we'd wait like 5 minutes for it to cool down. And then all the kids would grab some food and then go to the next room. And we seemed to keep coming back. In the last hour, we returned to the culinary classroom like 3 times because typical boys, they just wanted to eat. But it was really cool to see how the teachers were connecting with them. Like by the 3rd time, my son was a little bit more open to talking to the teacher and, wondering, is this a class that I would want to take? And I was really excited because when I think of my high school experience, I feel like it was very sheltered and there wasn't a lot to do. And that's maybe because of the path I was on and the path my father put me on, right? Like you don't have any options when you're taking, advanced physics and chemistry and biology. Like there's 3 courses written off right away. And then there's the maths and how I felt about English. So it's like, there's nothing left over for fun. I want my kid to have some fun. So if he wants to take a culinary class, go nuts, right? Like, enjoy your time as best as you can. But so when you talk about what you do, it excites me. Like, that sounds exciting for you too, you know?
It is. It totally is. And I I recognize as I say the words, I'm presenting it like a pragmatic, slightly dogmatic. This is just kind of like how you roll in a community classroom. But it is a thrill. It is cool. It is like always different, multimodal, multi-directional. Throw into that, all the other sort of just life management that we do with the students as well. Having them work on their personal health stuff, having them work on behavioral stuff, working in teams because we have EA support in there. Like there is so much happening. And if I just go adjacent to that, I think that is a part of what I'm channeling, is sort of like I talk about what I'm taking in by being in the trees. Like I talk about that in a way that's kind of peaceful and fulsome, but there's also an element of I think I'm tapping into that energy of being in the classroom that I miss. Like there's just something about that, the crowdedness, the being amongst something familiar. Like it's just there's something to that I think I'm kind of communicating across time here, just sort of like nostalgia. Oh, can't even believe I'm using the word nostalgia relative to my my teaching experience right now, but it feels so long ago.
Wow. So I want to dig a little bit deeper with your work just for a minute, and then we can move on. How do you envision, I know you've not been given any direction yet none of us have been given official direction on how we're moving as teachers using online spaces and digital learning at the moment. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know what the framework is for us, but I'd like to know from you, just as you've been on your own thinking about what digital online might look like for your students in your course, what have you been able, if anything, to piece together?
Well, I think the starting point will definitely be if I have no other direction. And if I have no other direction, the starting point will be fleshing out, because my program is, and if I speak just to the community classroom,
yes,
the support is so direct that I have to put together something that supports the parents taking on, like I have to singularly design digital tools. So just let's say the content, I have to design what's the word? I have to design compassionate and comprehensive toolkits for the parents, knowing that and everyone's kind of mentioned this about having to do homeschooling, knowing that I have to design it with the families in mind. Each of the families in mind in each of their specific contexts. So that's where I'm kind of paused there, because I can put together, here's my privilege. My privilege is that I can, over the next couple weeks, use my own kids in culinary skills training, film it, and put it online. It'll complement their own media training, their own sort of, I can work literacies into it. They can do writing. They can write some of the scripts for me. They can storyboard what the video shots are going to be. I can work their homeschooling into my course planning in a way that I think would be valuable for them too. And then I have to take that as a base offering and then put together customized schedules for each of the kids for tasks, right? So part of the probably the biggest layer, the biggest next layer will be finding a way to video conference with the parents, to find out what their needs are. I don't think I can't wholly design what's going to be necessary until I have a clear picture of what their current reality is. There will be no broad-based baseline for my design. There can't be. So I kind of think of it like it's going to have to be more like a library that then I put together tours for the parents. Okay, you're going to work. Why don't you work on cutting cucumbers? Go check out the cutting cucumber tutorial. And then once you've made it through and you feel like you want to, or they say to me, here's what we'd like to cook this week. And then I say, okay, check out video 3, check out the pictures that I posted about peeling carrots, and follow that as your sort of lesson plan at home.
So are you going to be in your kitchen recording you cutting the...
or my kids doing it. Probably my kids doing it. And then I'll demonstrate what the adult support looks like would be better.
Such a cool learning experience for your kids too. Like time with their dad, doing stuff that they're going to use for the rest of their life. I'm
fortunate that I can make it work that way. And that's, yes, I totally agree with you. And I ain't complaining, but I also I'm going to pause and acknowledge, like, I'm very fortunate that I can do that. But here's the thing: I might be given direction I might be sent in a different direction. It could be that, and that's just for the ASD programming. I don't know what the formal ask will be from my school board, and because I have kind of a professionally managed period, I'm also trying to imagine, because that my third period of the day, I don't have classrooms. So what does my going into classrooms and supporting kids learning look like? That's another space to kind of figure out. So me as a special education resource teacher, or a CERT, normally spending face-to-face time with my students, what does that look like digitally? I can imagine a 1.0 is that it's video conferencing and kind of like video conferencing tutoring. Where I want to push myself is where I want to push myself is to try and figure out if there's a 2.0 or a 3.0 different way to do this. I've put my name in for a work group that our union is putting together about distance learning and e-learning. I don't know if I'll make the cut because I'm far more theoretical and actual right now. There are other people that are using all the tools and would be able to speak to efficacy that way. But I'm a pretty good wrecker and rebuilder, as in asking the questions about what will be the legacy of this decision. Like I can kind of do the, is it De Bono that does the hats? You know, if you remember that, the 6 hats, they're different colored hats. It's just kind of ways to kind of respond on things. And I always find myself on the black hat. And the black hat is like the wrecker hat, always pointing out what's wrong with it. But I always take like what's wrong with the model, what's wrong with this decision, and kind of like tries to pull it apart. But I look at it as critical analysis, as in let's do a pre-mortem on where this could go and figure out how we can like avoid it the next time or do something entirely different. So I'm trying to figure out that part too.
Huh. That's wild, man. That's wild. And don't get me wrong, like I'm not complaining about what I'm going to need to do, but what I'm going to need to do is lame compared to what you need to do. In fact, you are giving me some ideas on how I can possibly, and again, I'm saying all this not knowing what the parameters are going to be for me or what I'm going to be expected to do, but my wife and I were talking last night about possibly recording lessons. And then because my wife was saying, like, we were talking about, synchronous versus asynchronous teaching. And it's, like we could say, hey, okay, we're going to be on this platform at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, but we don't know who can be there and whether parents are using their computer at 10 a.m. to do work and the kids just aren't going to be doing school at that time or whatever. So we were like, well, we don't want to put our families in that position. So what we can do is we can record lessons or some type of situation, experience, and then provide it to the children so that they can work on it when it's good for them and their families. So yeah, we were playing with that, and I got a big thumbs up to my wife, who said to me the other day, last week or whatever. She's like, I wanna do something for my kids. I want to read to my kids. How can I do that? So after some back and forth, I introduced her to StreamYard. So now my wife's on StreamYard, and what she does is every day she reads a chapter of this book that she bought online. So when she knew we weren't going back for a bit, she ordered a book on Amazon. It came. Now she's reading it every day. So every day my wife has a YouTube channel. She opens up her computer and she turns on the live stream, and she doesn't let them know that she's live streaming. She just records it and then pushes it out. And what's funny is the other day she's like, this is awesome. This is so cool. And I'm looking at her with one of those looks like, you've been making fun of me for how long about having a YouTube channel and doing things with it for the kids, with the kids. And now all of a sudden, out of necessity, you now have a YouTube channel. You're literally like recording yourself on video, live stream, and then using the technology I use for what we do to push it to your YouTube channel, which is brand new. We had to establish her YouTube channel last week because she's never turned it on. And now she's telling her friends, and they're starting to do it too. And I'm like, well, there you go. Like, you've got the portal. You just open up your thing. You do your lesson. You show your diagrams, whatever. You do what you need to do for your kids. And then you get the YouTube link and you post it in D2L. And then if parents need to revisit it, they can. And like, there's opportunity, right? And we have the means. But then we moved into the discussion of, oh, by the way, I hijacked her YouTube channel yesterday. It was funny. I grabbed the book, I grabbed the laptop, and I went outside on the front porch and started. And then she came out. She's like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm going to read to your kids. She's like, no, you're not. This is my show. And then she took the stuff, took over, and I went inside. But, then we talked about, well, what's that going to look like for us? So, for example, Monday morning, my wife has a staff meeting. And I said to her, like, I gave her some pro tips, like, while you're listening to your principal or whatever, turn off the camera, because you might have your oldest in the basement streaming whatever on YouTube, doing his thing for his free time. And then I might be working on the laptop over here, so I'm sucking bandwidth. And the little one might be watching Netflix. And I'm like, so, are your people aware that it's not just you with the full funnel bandwidth? Like, we're all going to be sucking some of it up. And she's like, that's kind of a concern. I said, well, if this is the way we're moving, then it's time for us to educate people on what this looks like and how this functions. And it's funny because since all this has started, I've been enjoying the fact that people have been asking me for assistance, guidance, and support, because I've always offered it to them, but they've never needed it, or they've never wanted it, or never felt the necessity to take me up on that offer. But now, with this whole digital move, people are like, Rolland, how do you do this on this? Which is awesome. I don't mind at all. Like, at our staff meeting, my name is on the agenda for, if you have a problem tech-wise, email Rolland. He's happy to help. And I am. And it's kind of cool because I enjoy that kind of troubleshooting. When somebody emails me, says, this is what's happening in my Google Classroom, can you help? And I'm like, I can give you some suggestions. I can get the ball rolling with you. I enjoy the problem. I may not know the tool, and that's fine. But my approach to like the growth mindset, if you will, around this stuff is a little bit more open than some of the other people I know. And so I'm willing to go down that journey with you, that problem solving, troubleshooting journey. And so I've kind of been enjoying that lately. I feel like I'm being needed. I'm useful. I like that. And you know, I'm currently making 3 videos, right? Because it's like, hey, let's do a video about this. Well, who's going to do the video? Ask Rolland. You know, so I've been getting hit from all directions. The hockey team is like, hey, can we try this? And then I'm doing my thing with the church, and then I'm doing my thing with my kids at home, and then I'm doing my thing with the staff at school. So more than 3 requests, but like everybody's like, well, since we can't see each other, let's put it together into some kind of video content, and Roland's the guy for that. So it's interesting how things shift and the way responsibilities shift. And you know, I posted a picture on Twitter of me and my vice principal helping my principal with some tech stuff. I loved it. It was awesome to get an email from him saying, dude, I'm thinking this, if you have a minute, can you help me? And I was like, instant. We were on Google Meet and we're experimenting, and I'm troubleshooting with them, and they're both open. So it's like, it was actually fun. You know what I mean? It wasn't, it's like I got 2 people who are like willing to learn, and they're like, hey, help us. We know that you have some fluency here. Help me. Yeah, man, let's do it. And I felt good. I was helping. I was working with 2 people that I trust and admire, who inspire me. So it's like bonus for everybody. And we got it to work. We were able to help him solve his problem. So it's a new world right now, and I enjoy being helpful. And it's, a lot of people have said to me in the last 2 days, they've said, wow, like we appreciate your skill set. We didn't know that we would need it like this. So thanks for being patient. Thanks for helping me out. And I'm like, happy to help.
I'm digging the constraint and scarcity element that you're kind of touching on in this, and how that can lead to creativity. I'm kind of digging that. Like, I think that's a big part of kind of like a positive mindset moving forward. Like positive mindset as far as we can discover something here if we get, you know, kind of cozy with ambiguity and lean on individuals that we hadn't really considered before, like bring other new faces into the conversation. I think that's kind of a cool part of this next move into whatever EDU becomes. So
and I have to tell you, and I think I've said this on the podcast before, I really dislike the fact that creativity is born from what I'm going to call negative circumstances or necessity, but in a negative way. I really dislike that. I get it. I totally get it. I don't have to like it, though.
Shape that a little bit. What do you...
Well,
Tell me more.
Okay, well, I'm going to dive into some of my bias here. So I've never really considered myself creative because of the standard of what like creativity has looked like for me as I've grown up. And again, shaped by school. I've always seen creativity from one perspective. Thankfully, I've busted through that glass, and I now see creativity in a whole whack of different ways, and I am a creative person. It just doesn't look like the standard that was always placed in front of me growing up. So that's my bias. And it's like, for someone who's For someone who has spent a lot of time learning from difficult situations, there's there's the negative emotions that are attached to having to problem solve my way out of a situation. So if I consider myself from a holistic perspective, I'm not going to ignore the emotions I feel around past problem solving issues where creativity has come into play. I've always taken the creativity and I've not called it creativity because I don't want to attach it to something negative. But we see that when people are constrained in particular ways, when their context is shifted quickly to a place of discomfort, you can either sit in that discomfort or you can try to problem solve your way out of it, or you can do both. You can still feel the emotion, but work your way out.
I think wellness, just a wellness pause. I think it can also break people, especially when you put in the peer pressure element. If everyone around you is striving for creativity, then it can, I think you can be kind of broken over that. And I've often said, even with the things that make me feel creative and maybe others have acknowledged as artistic or creative, I think in my operating system, what I crave, maybe in addition to being creative, like arriving there, is also being useful. And I think that there's a really cool conversation there about utility and usefulness in creativity as well, that if someone has a hard time tapping into that abstract idea of being artistic or creative or innovative, can you be useful? Can you sort of create something or make something that is useful? So just to, I want to pause that because I think people can be broken over the pressure of trying to be that person. And sometimes just because others are all kind of humble bragging about being that person too.
Well, so, okay. Creativity. There's the creativity of, I'm going to go to the church. I'm going to use my drone to catch some really cool video. And then I'm going to put it together into some kind of package that will make people feel something. That is a work of art, right? And I say that, and it sounds so foreign to me because I've never seen myself that way. But that's in fact what I'm doing here. Mm-hmm. I'm being creative and I'm creating art, and I'm doing it because I want to do it. Nobody's forcing me. It's an idea that came from my little brain, and I'm actioning it. I'm executing on it. So there's that creativity. But then there's the creativity of my wife saying, "What do you mean I can't stand in front of my class and read a book to them? How come I can't be with my students? I need to find a way to be with my students." She's like, "I got a problem. I need to solve the problem." And I'm like, "Well, okay, why don't you take this route? Why don't we do it like this?" And her situation is not as extreme as I would like it to be, because she felt some discomfort. She felt, sadness that she couldn't be with her kids. But we were able to problem solve it. And I don't think if we didn't problem solve it, it wouldn't have been the end of the world for her. But what I'm trying to get at is that creativity, and I know it's not binary, it's not one or the other, but if you look at it that way, if you look at black and white, creativity can be black. It can be you just run with yourself and you be artistic and you be creative and you create because you want to or you feel the need to. And there's something there that's the positive emotions. Then there's the white. There's the creativity where we have a problem. We're going to solve this problem. We don't know how yet, but we're going to troubleshoot. We're going to trial and error this thing. And we're just going to move in that direction until we can find something that works to solve our problem or to help us with our problem. If you have enough of those and you don't crave that type of experience, then it can bring you down. It can make you feel bad that you're constantly having to problem solve because of negative situations, and not the other half of it, which is problem solving or creating problems that you want to solve because you inherently want to solve that problem. There's something inside of you that wants to go after that. if you even want to call it a problem. And that's where I get stuck on creativity. The times where you're forced, and not necessarily forced, but where you have to you're going to sink or swim. It's that bad that you have to make something happen. And so the creativity, you're not connecting with it in a way that feeds you positively. You're connecting with it in a way that you need to do it in order to swim. And so then people can look at your story and say, wow, you are really creative. And they say it from the Black perspective of the, wow, you really solved your problem and you're living a great life. They feel good. But the person who had to live through it doesn't feel good or didn't feel good at the time. Anyway, so that's just my connection to it. And we've talked about this before. We've talked, why do you have to be creative? Because there's a situation happening that really sucks. And, for example, I'll give you an example. It's being a teacher, and being a teacher who is enjoys using technology in his classroom and enjoys teaching kids about new technologies and how they can use them to learn and to demonstrate their learning. I've had to get creative. I once had a cart of Chromebooks. And for 3 years, I got used to teaching with that cart in my classroom. So there was never an issue. If a kid needed to get on the internet, every kid had their own Chromebook. They were assigned their own Chromebook. Hey, Mr. C, I need to do this. I need to get on the net. Go nuts. Hey, Mr. C, I just shared a document with you. When you're done talking to so-and-so, can you give me some feedback? Of course. Hey, Mr. C, I want to learn about such and such, and we don't have that book in the library. Grab the Chromebook. Then it's taken away. Now I have to get creative. I have to solve my problem. Because now it's a problem, because I've become accustomed to operating a particular way. Now I need to shift gears. But why am I shifting gears? Because powers outside of my control decided that my way of operating wasn't going to operate anymore. So I got creative and I solved my problem. But there wouldn't have been a problem if people just let me be. That kind of creativity, it sucks for me. Now, as I say that, I don't like how it sounds. So I'll probably now, because I'm a little bit more aware, I'll try to start thinking about it differently, because I don't want that to weigh me down. And as someone who is considering becoming a principal, I watch my principals, and they're constantly having to be creative and to have to solve problems, not for the sake of doing it because they're interested. They're doing it because there are situations that are arising that they need to deal with, or they're being proactive and they're looking at their environment, they're looking at their situation and doing what they can to avoid issue, to be proactive, which is awesome. So both in a proactive perspective and a reactive perspective, I notice that school administrators need to, you can't say, no, I'm not solving that problem. There is no option. The buck stops with you. You problem solve. You get creative. So I'm shifting, right? Because I want to. I'm not saying I'd be good at it, but what I am saying is that I'm open to I'm open to it, and that I would like to work towards a mindset that will allow me to be able to problem solve without having the baggage attached. And I think I'm loving that, because that's what I'm about. So I'm loving the awareness, and I'm loving the want to move in a different direction with my mindset to benefit me. I don't want to walk around being a sad sack all the time, and sometimes my family will tell you sometimes I am like that, but that's not how I want to live my life. And I know that now. And I wish that I knew that, 20 years ago, but I didn't. I know it now. So that's kind of my business with creativity, is that I tend to not like when it's born of necessity in a negative way. And it seems like in schools, the necessity seems to come from negative. It doesn't come from positive. There is time in your classroom to be creative for the sake of creating and for the sake of moving in a direction that you crave. But there's also a lot of, hey, this is happening. It can't happen anymore, or it's not going to happen anymore. We need to think of a way to deal with it. I feel like that's a forced creativity, and I've never liked that before, but I think I'm going to start. Well, I have started, because if you ask anybody I work with, when there's a problem at work, I don't just walk away. I don't just say, yeah, I'm not dealing with it, and I don't do that. I deal with it. But I don't think of it as creativity. I call it problem solving. So I take poor problem solving, I take problem solving and I take creativity and I move it over, and I'm like, I don't want to call this creativity because that's my fun time. I'm going to call this problem solving, where I can just throw whatever I want at it, and I don't care what happens to problem solving, but I do care about what happens to creativity.
Yeah, a lot of what you're talking about kind of also reminds me of design process. And it's almost as if what you're talking about is kind of loving sitting kind of in the ideate and prototype stage. Like that's sort of maybe where it's clear that we're being creative, that there's something kind of being put together and test driven. Like that's almost like that's the feedback loop of feeling like we're doing something creative. But I think, well, and I think, and I wouldn't disagree with that. I think that there's an accessible area of creativity in the sort of ideate and prototype stage. 2 stages before that, though, typically, and there's a lot of different design thinking kind of frameworks out there, like derivatives of the framework. But the first two, as far as empathizing and defining, are really interesting when it comes to talking about being creative. And I think starting with the empathy, like you saying, I'm not going to walk away, means that you're starting in empathy. You're feeling in a connection and allowing it to transform you. You're letting the outside in. And if that's not necessarily, if we're not going to say it's creative, I would say it's in the beginning of design thinking. And I put creative thinking and design thinking very close to each other. Maybe the design thinking just gives us a little bit more of a concrete way to kind of give us the indicators as to whether or not we're actually going to end up somewhere when we actually collaborate and start to build something. But that empathy point, starting with the empathy, or at least recognizing the power of empathy and the power of transformation that happens there, means that you're already starting to collaborate, which is really cool to look at it that way. You're already including the other in your thinking. And I think when you start there, and even moving forward with whatever, that's where I intuit that I have to start with the families with the lesson design, is that I really do have to start with understanding what their context is and getting as close to I used to say back in Access, so my Access days when I was working in that program for students on expulsion and suspension, I used to really be aware of moments in our intake process where I felt like, and I would say to the families, I'm like, okay, we're sitting at your kitchen table now. And I didn't, on one hand, it was valuable to be included there, but usually I would mention it because the family was fighting. Got to be honest. They would start to argue with each other. And I'm like, okay, we need to back off just a little bit. Just breathe. We're going to sort of like take a moment here. I said, because we're too close to the kitchen table. Like we will not be able to access the tools that we need to be able to move forward in a creative fashion if we're existing in an argument that happened before you even arrived here. I said, so let's just take a moment. Let's back off from the kitchen table and let's bring it back to the context that we're in. So I tried to get them to reverse empathizes and recognize that we're in a setting here where the tools and the access to tools are kind of incumbent on you participating here, not just sort of going through old habits. So, but that empathy part and getting people to kind of like buy in, when I get the chance to talk to the families, I have to flip that kitchen table and actually get to their kitchen table. Like I actually do have to have a very clear sense of how I'm going to collaborate with them and in a really non-judgmental way, include their thinking in my course design or whatever it looks like moving forward. And I think it's going to be a huge challenge, but a really interesting challenge. My brain sometimes says, why didn't I just do this in the first place? Well, that kind of taps into your talking about certain problems popping up, like, now they're coming to you about. Well, sometimes in these moments of high energy, new things are created, right? We're sort of like new ways of thinking, seeing new people. I think part of it is you being kind of steadfast in kind of doing your learning out loud and easily accessible and in a broad fashion, created a kind of inevitability that thinking would swing back around to ask you for help. Your intention, since I've met you, is to learn in public and to learn in an obvious fashion. So having individuals come to you now and ask you for support, it was always a matter of time. So, but coming back to that empathy, feeling, making sure that you're not only having some compassion for yourself, but including the others in there is a really cool way that I've come to think about collaboration and kind of putting creative process or design thinking together.
Right on. And I love that you talked about design thinking, because as soon as you say design thinking, my mindset shifts. It totally shifts, bro. Design thinking I don't have negative emotions attached to design thinking. Even though design thinking, some of it that I've done has taken me through some like difficult patches of problem solving, of trying to figure something out, trying to make something work. And that iteration process is beautiful. There's something about that. When I jump into that iteration process, it's beautiful. I was trying to talk to my son about it the other day, and he's just not getting it. He's learning how to draw different things. Mm-hmm. And he was working last night on you're going to love this, a Toronto skyline.
Nice.
So we're watching this YouTube video, and he's trying to put this together, and he's freaking out, eh? Like every second building, he's like, I can't do it. And I'm looking at him, and he can tell my blood's starting to boil, eh? As a dad, that's the thing. As his dad, it upsets me so much that he won't open his brain to iteration and to failure. I'm like, did you honestly think you were going to replicate what you see in the video on your paper the first time? Are you serious? And like, I'm serious. I'm like, are you serious that you think that that's how it works? And he's looking at me like, and he's angry. And I'm like, dude, it's like anything else you want to learn. It takes time. And he's just looking at me. I said, like your hockey shots. Because yesterday he did this 10-shot, 10 push-up challenge on video for his hockey friends. And I said, when you watch the video and you see what your wrist shot looks like now compared to what it looked like 6 months ago, I'm like, 6 months ago, you couldn't get it off the ice. Now you can put the puck where you want to put it. I'm like, that took months of work. He shot over 7,000 shots that we documented for his team. I'm like, you don't just become good after the first 5 shots. You spent over 7,000 shots thinking about your method, the routine, the like overthinking. Like 7,000 times you did something, and almost each time we did it, we broke it down, right? And we kept moving up to the standard every time. I'm like, that's what you did for a hockey shot. Now you want to draw the Toronto skyline. You expect to do it instantly. Then he got up and he left. He was totally emotional. There was no logic there at all. And I was totally logical, no emotion. And it's like, so for me, when it's framed a certain way, it's not problematic. It's more of a challenge, and I'm willing to take that challenge. In fact, you know what you've got me thinking about? This whole talk has me thinking about my principal. And now that I'm thinking about what we're talking about and attaching it to the way he presents ideas to me, the guy always presents problems to me as opportunities for challenge. And I don't mean for that to sound, I don't even know what the word is. Like, I'm not trying to make it sound like hokey. He literally comes at everything from a perspective of, hey man, how are we going to learn to do this? Not, we have a problem, we have to solve it, or else. It's like, hey, I need to learn how to do this. How do I do that? What would you suggest? What do I need to work on? This is my boss talking to me. And what I love about it is that I'm learning from the way he's talking to me. Now, I'm not him, and I don't approach things the same way he does, but I'm certainly learning about how he operates, and his style of leadership has to do with who he is as a person and the way he lives his life, the way he operates. Um, so I appreciate that, Chris, because I'm in a mode where I'm sucking in everything that my administrators are putting down because I'm paying very close attention. And I'm paying even more attention now that we are not face to face and we're not at school. So I'm watching my administrator. I'm seeing his growth and his development as someone doing his job using this technology, right? And you think that this is easy, but you and I as podcasters know that the tech does what it wants sometimes.
I was going to cut in about say, you and I as fathers know. Sometimes the kids do that as well, right? The family has a learning how to do family. There's similarities here. Learning the grind of podcasting, learning the grind of fatherhood.
But 100% I agree. There's connections. There's a thread running through all that.
Yep.
There's a thread. And so for me, it's about perspective. As soon as you said design thinking, my brain opened up because I'm open to that model.
Yep.
I'm open to design thinking. I'm open to iteration. It's when I'm not expecting it or when I'm not acknowledging it. That's when I have a problem. That's when my problem arises. It's like I totally need to prep. It's like if I could use a kitchen analogy, I say to my wife, okay, I'm making pasta and meatballs tonight, but I don't think it through. I don't think about what I need to do with the meat to prep it, to get it ready for meatball. I don't think about the type of pasta I have and how long it might cook. I just say, yeah, we're having pasta and meatballs in 30 minutes, but I don't consider any of the things that I need to prepare for in order to get to the final product. Then I become frustrated, agitated. Nobody wants to hang out with me. I'm useless. But when I say, hey, we're having pasta and meatballs tonight, and then I think about, okay, this is what I need to do with the meat. Let's take a look and see what kind of pasta I have. Like I'm a preparatory type individual. When I prepare and when I know what my work is and I get to work, I'm generally okay. It's when I don't have time to prepare, which is also, it's a problem for someone who wants to enter into a role, into a job where you don't always have time to prepare. Things come at you and you need to make decisions. You need to act. And you can't say to someone, come back in an hour, right? FNCS and the police walk into the school. We need to talk to you about so-and-so. Whoa, give me the situation. Have a seat. I'll get you some coffee. I'm going to go in my office. I'll be out in an hour. It's not going to work, right? Like depending on the situation. So I'm learning to be fluent with the situation. But here's how I prepare myself. I prepare myself for those situations by learning about, as much as I can, those situations and how the people I look up to and who are mentoring me, how they deal with those situations. So right now I have the ability, and I do it all the time. I walk into the office and I read the room. And I can tell by my vice principal, the look on her face. I can tell if I should knock on the door and interrupt who she's talking to in her office, or if I don't interrupt. And by the way my principal's acting, he's pretty good. He usually acts the same way all the time, but I can tell. And now he's involving me, right? He's saying, hey, Chidiak, get over here. I want to tell you about the situation that I'm dealing with here, because he knows I'm interested. And you know what? He respects me and he respects my experience. So he says to me, like, what would you do? So I tell him, well, I think I might try this first and that. And then he'll tell me what he's doing. And it's really cool, actually. So I love that he's taking time out of his crazy experiences to stop and say, hey, Chidiak, get over here. You need to hear this one. This is what I'm dealing with right now. I'm like, that's awesome that he would take the time to like involve me. My VP does it too. She'll say, holy cow, this has been like quite the morning. She's like, listen, check out this experience. And with, you know, they do it in such a professional way. They're not divulging information that's going to cause harm. They're just saying, here's the situation. What do you do? Where would you start? What do you think of this? Or this is what I did. What do you think? Right? They're like open enough and they're okay enough with who they are to invite me in and say, hey, this is what I did. What do you think? What would you do? And you know what? And I told you, I'm not going to share this story, but I did tell you a story about before school ended. I think it was the Wednesday. I think it was the Wednesday or maybe the Thursday. I don't know. I was sitting in the planning time room and I was working. My principal walked in. He had just been in the staff room to get his lunch. And we're talking and something came up and he goes, okay, here, listen, this is a tip for you for when you become a principal. This is a pro tip. And I was loving it. It's like I'm reading a factual text, and you know on the side there's always the extra tidbits of information. He's like, pro tip, listen up. And he tells me when this happens, this is what a principal does automatically. You don't think, you just act for this type of situation. And I'm literally sitting there like, this is awesome. The book's coming to me. I don't need to go to the book. And that's why I value his time, because he's not just like come to my office and talk to me. He'll talk. Sometimes he just walks in the room. He's like, what's going on? Because he was in the staff room. He's like, I haven't seen Chidiac today. He'll just come in and say, what's up? What's going on? And we talk about our kids. We talk about sports. We talk about school. You know, it's like, it's awesome. So I'm soaking that up as much as I can because it's worth a lot to me. And I remember the times when I worked with someone who didn't do that, who didn't care about my development that way. And I'm not saying that in a mean way. I'm just saying it like that wasn't on their radar. For my principal now, it's on his radar. He's happy to do it. For my past principals, wasn't on their radar, or we didn't get along. I didn't want them in my room. They didn't want to be in my room. It's all good. That's the way life goes sometimes. I'm glad I'm not with them right now during this, because I am soaking up how my administrators are leading in this new way. And I'm getting a little bit of the inside scoop on my microphone sucks. How do I fix it? Because I can't run staff meetings when people can't hear me. Right? I can't do that. So help me. Right on, man. Let's do it. I'm happy to iterate with that problem. Happy.
You got just a quick one. So me in the past couple of years, you know, kind of observing my thinking and slowly kind of creeping up on my thinking as far as what I want to do next in EDU. And part of it includes a curiosity about learning about becoming an administrator. So part of doing that with intention has been kind of similar to your path, a little bit of the job shadowing. So the last 2 years, I've been fortunate to be able to connect with one of the vice principals on Thursday mornings and just have it's conversation, but it's sometimes really interesting conversation about the connect. In some ways, it's similar in shape and feel to what you and I do on Saturdays, because to talk about the context of school without including, and this is for me, without including the impact on the whole person is not valuable to me. I need to be able to sort of see impact I need to be able to see the power of something by the impact it has on the individual. So what he often has done is he's talked about, he sort of presents me something that may have happened in school or something that he was listening to on the weekend or a system tool that he's learning how to use. And then he also includes in the context the suffering around it. Like, so his kind of like process of working it through. And one of the things I noticed recently is that he doesn't say to me, how would you do it? Or what would you do instead? He just leaves it hanging out there like a meatball and waits. And often he doesn't wait long because I do want to talk to him. But I've realized there haven't been very many provocations like, what would you do or what would you do instead? Or what do you think about that? He just waits for the thinking to come out, which is a really fascinating tool, creating a space of safety to be able to respond genuinely. And I feel like I can, because part of it, he's introduced on the front end a very open kind of, here's why this is bugging me, or here's why I think I'm doing a good job. Like, he's being vulnerable in how he's sort of sharing his experience. And I don't think I was clearly processing that, probably more so because I felt a connection as opposed to being kind of logical like I am right now. You just kind of fall in step. It's kind of like that automaticity, maybe not now, but in professional settings where someone would just walk up and want to shake your hand. You fall in step with it. Most times you fall in step with it, as in you're going to offer your hand as a handshake. It's just the training that you have. I don't know if that's necessary. That could be not necessarily emotional. That's just social training. We shake hands. I think that's the handshake that happens in those moments with people that I end up learning from, is when their process begins with kind of an authentic experiential share and not necessarily a direct question of how I would deal. They just feel the energy like they want to talk to me. They feel the energy like they want to sort of share with me. Now, I set up this frame to go and meet with him, but this is what our conversation frame shifted into. So we'll see when we get back. I plan on continuing that, but I feel like this is the tone and color of what the job entails. I can look on his desk and I can see his shelf and the books that he's read. I can read his timeline on Twitter and see what he's promoting. I can look on OCT and see what his qualifications are. I can sign up for the courses and take them myself too. Those all being very concrete pieces in the path. I think what I'm really appreciating is his vulnerability of kind of sharing how that's all getting stitched together. So, and I dig what you mentioned about your administrator. That's gold.
The vulnerability is key. Again, you say it and then it just hits me. It's the fact that they're being vulnerable with me. And I respect that 100%. And that goes a long way. That goes a long way with me. And I think they know that. They're not stupid people.
Oh, they're feeling at the same time. That's what I like. Sorry, that I have no doubt there's authentic feels going on. Like, I don't think for a second he's doing it just because he wants me to become an administrator. I think that we've created a rapport that is a bond. Like, there's friendship there, as well as mentorship, as well as leadership, as well as teaching. It's kind of tumbling over each other. It's tumbling over each other all the time. So, again, apologies to jump in. I think that it is relational. This isn't just sort of like a paternal thing where he's kind of like, just, here you go, Chris, I want the best for you. I think he wants the best for both of us in that moment. And I'm starting to feel that too. I want the best. I want to be able to offer him advice on some of the decisions and his experiences. I want to be able to offer my perspective. That's a really interesting kind of flattening of, I think, the leader, mentor, teacher relationship, where it does feel lateral. It feels parallel. And neither one of you is necessarily, you might have more experience, but that doesn't actually up your game. It just means you're a broader surface to kind of like give stability to the conversation.
Yeah, no, I don't, you feel free to jump in whatever you want. It's that, but the vulnerability is key. It's key. And like, I know that goes a long way with me. And so when they ask me for something, my advice or assistance with something, I am happy to help, because I am appreciative of the time that they've put into me and the vulnerability that they show me. That's a big deal to me. And I think that goes back to just growing up and being so guarded, that when people let their guard down, to me, it's like, it's almost like it's an honor in a weird kind of way. It's an honor. So I don't take it lightly. I'd love to see your pick, man.
Oh yeah. Okay. Um,
Uh-oh. Is it not done?
what's that? No, no, no. I'm done. I'm done. Okay.
You're probably done an hour ago.
No, 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 no.
New normal with the brick wall. Tell us about it.
So I think that my feels around it are, well, if it's design process, if I'm hanging it back on that, a wall's a pretty prototypical way to build stability, reliability. It's a ubiquitous, almost common part of building a house or a structure. I'm complicating my analysis here. You're asking me to go, so I'll go poetic on you for a second. But I think that the feels that I was getting off is that, you know, there's a cautionary. I think there's a cautionary place that we're in moving forward with whatever version of EDU, whatever new path that we're creating here. One, the old path won't disappear right away. It's going to be there. There's going to be bits left behind. Two, what we design, being mindful of it so that it feels as real to us as the former version or the other version. Because I think people will need that stability to feel confident to move forward. But I'm also cognizant of a little bit of the wildness that happens no matter the model that we choose. There's still going to be the wildness happening around the wall as it falls apart, as we try to build it. And that's a little bit of the kind of the entropy of building something, like just how things naturally break down. So I think that's everything that was kind of cracking off in the picture.
Right on. Thanks for going poetic.
There we go, going poetic on a Saturday morning.
Thanks for connecting, man.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Good combo, man. I like this one. And I love we're dropping into like 2-hour episodes now.
It's kind of cool. But it's almost like a sign of the times. Like before I saw my perspective of the podcast, the time you and I spend hanging out on Saturday mornings, I saw as how do I explain it? It's like part of my week, right? Like it was part of what I do and how I function. But now that I'm not spending time with anybody, I'm not going anywhere, the podcast feels I'm much more, my sensitivity to it is heightened. I feel like I couldn't wait all week to have this conversation. It's like the keystone of my week in terms of connecting with people. And it felt as powerful before the pandemic, but now it just seems like Saturday morning, man, I'm hanging out with my buddy Chris. We're going to talk and we don't know what exactly we're going to talk about, but it's going to go deep. It's going to go poetic, and it's worth my time. Like totally worth my time. So big thank you to that for that. I know we're right at the end, but I want to thank my buddy Doug Coombs.
Mm-hmm.
Doug has his own podcast about the game of cornhole, and he's the one that got us. I know I love it.
I like the game. You have that in your backyard, and I'm wandering off as you're talking to me and looking for the bean bags. Like I'm just like, where's Clef going? He's going, and I'll play by myself.
Doug has his own podcast. It's called Down and Back.
Mm-hmm.
And his YouTube channel has exploded. Like Doug's got like international followers and stuff. Like it's out of like he's telling me when I would see him at the rink, he'd be like, "So how's your YouTube channel?" I'm like, "Doug, it's the same as it was when I talked to you about podcasting, right?" He's one of these guys. He's like, "Tell me about podcasting," and then he gets on YouTube and just whoosh, his content is important to a lot of people. So his star has skyrocketed, and it's really cool. So he hit me up the other day, and he was gently telling me, he was gently asking me, why I'm not doing next level stuff with the YouTube channel. Like, why am I not using hashtags? Why am I not putting in a description? Because he said that now that everybody's stuck at home, his views are going up. People are
Yeah.
watching more. He's like, is that happening to you? And I'm like, no. Even in a pandemic, people won't listen to our podcast. So just talking to him, I went back, and our last 2 episodes, I put in some hashtags and I put in some descriptions and gave it a title. So whatever. I mean, it's because I have the time, so I'm doing it and I'm giving it a shot. It's kind of like an experiment.
Yep.
But it's just really funny. So a big thumbs up to Doug he says every now and again he'll just turn on our podcast and just let it run as he's doing whatever he thinks it's interesting. So hey, I appreciate that.
You could, in theory. Maybe this is how we need to market ourselves. For those of you that are feeling isolated, just turn it on, and kind of put your laptop in the next room. Go about your business in the kitchen, like making snacks or doing the dishes or folding laundry. And it probably would sound a lot like you have company over. It's just that sort of chatter in the background of 2 people talking in the next room. Every once in a while, you get some highlights of, oh, digital technology, oh, being a father. Like, it would sound like dinner party conversation. And 1 or 2 people have kind of said that just in general. One of the things, maybe the only thing, I don't know. One of the things they kind of dig is that they feel like they're kind of sitting with us. Like they're just kind of around, but connected to the conversation. So maybe that's our new marketing angle, that we just say, hey, invite us to your next dinner party.
Interesting, eh?
Yeah. I like that.
This is awesome, man. 2 hours.
It flew by.
It did. And it's perfect timing too, because we're moving into the lunch hour, so I can go downstairs and make lunch for the boys. I don't know what they did for breakfast, but
yeah, no one was up when I came down, so everyone's kind of leveraging that little bit later sleep in.
I still can't believe you're waking up at the early times that you are.
Dude, I would like to say that it was intentional. It's just training. My brain does it. I set my alarm this morning for 6. I woke up at 5:05. And so I lay there and I think to myself, where's my time better invested? That's how it goes. Where's it better invested? So I got up, grabbed a shower, had a little bite to eat. So like I'm coming up on, I guess, breakfast 2 or lunch. I don't know what we're going to call it, but
It's all good, eh?
yeah, it's all good, man.
Okay, pal. Great chat. And I know we'll keep talking.
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to your video, like the church videos. I know you sent me some stills. I'd love to see some stuff in motion.
As soon as my staff is putting together a staff message for our school community.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of hip deep in that. And as soon as I finish that and I can get it off my phone, then I'm looking to dive deep into the church video.
Mm-hmm.
Music can be a real pain in the you-know-what, eh? Like,
Yep.
I'm trying to find... I'm leaning towards church-type music, but it might be too heavy. I don't know. That's the other thing, too. Depending on the mood I'm in when I'm creating, it could go in any direction.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's all good, though.
Sometimes just acoustic is good.
Yes.
Kind of,
yes.
you know what I mean? Kind of lightens it up. Or kind of light piano. Not too many voices, just like singular light piano. Somebody on the piano. Like, but
I've been
again,
for instrumental. I've been looking for instrumental. But I found a couple of interesting things that connect to the namesake of the church. So I think that'd be a nice layer to have a hymn, a chant that's connected to St. John.
That's good.
But I mean, whatever. I mean, knowing me, I'll make like 3 different versions. Choose your own adventure. You can have the light piano. You can have the heavy traditional church instrumental. You pick. I don't know.
And your TikTok version. Don't forget the TikTok.
It's what's funny about that is I was thinking like my style of video might not sit well with the people who will be consuming the product. So if you think about church and you think about the people who attend church services, particularly St. John's, It's an older. I don't know.
It is possible.
I laugh. I laugh because I showed my son one of the clips and he actually felt like, I can't watch this. And I'm like, what's wrong? He goes, I feel like I'm up in the ceiling of the church. He's like, it's making me sick. And I'm like, I never considered that. Doesn't make me sick at all. But I could see, I got one shot, man, where I'm literally like almost scraping the ceiling. And I had to be careful. Because here's the cool thing about my drone. Where I was standing in some parts of the church, there was no, I wasn't able to get a location signal. And when that happens, your drone will only go to a certain height and it won't go above that height. But then I discovered when I stood closer to a window or to the front door, my controller, my phone were able to get that location pinpoint. And then all of a sudden the drone just shot up into the air. So I was able to capture a couple of shots as high as I could get in the church without scraping the ceiling. But I'm glad that I didn't do it earlier because I have a feeling I would have crashed my drone. And as we end this episode, I will tell you I did crash the drone once in the church, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
It happens. I'll just tag you to, your blog, New Fluencies, and I know you got some pics of you and the kiddos in there doing the work together, discovering together. You could just as easily switch out some new peeps from the congregation and introducing, like I said, this Sunday, everyone at service, bring your drone. We're going to practice. We're going to capture the celebration. So,
and that Sunday is going to have to wait until this pandemic is over.
For sure.
But I get it.
Good.
Okay, pal. It was great talking to you.
Yep. Be well. We'll chat soon, I'm sure. And see you later.
Yeah. Take care.